So this is what the chart looks like from traditional strategy marketing. We see it going from top down. Business strategy, step one, where's the business? Why is it going? Step two, what is required? And then step three, how can we get it implemented, or how do we deliver it? And again, this is a flow where it goes, where information flows between each of the boxes or each of the groups. This used to work, but doesn't really work as well now. Due to the internet and to other technology advances, you really can't do this. Who could have predicted things like Amazon? Time is not available for the sequencing of these items. You just don't have the time to spend like a full year making a 3 to 5 year plan. So there's a lot of reactive nature. Now that's not to say that you couldn't do it. It's just that the pressures right now on IS organizations or organizations in general do not lend themselves to this type of planning. That is a cultural problem within either a single company or within an industry or across in corporate America in this case. Some people believe that we should do more planning. I know for Japanese companies, they do 10, 20, and 50-year plans. We don't do that in the United States, and that may be something that we should look at. But the pressures on the organization are such that it doesn't allow you to do that. Another one is IS doesn't support the business anymore. It does more. It is actually an active partner in sales and operational efficiency. And so what we really find is that the reason planning and figuring out the right planning method, why planning is difficult or figuring out the right planning method, is because of the culture. Went too fast. The enterprise information management model, the business sector, the technology sector, we have this circular type of movement of information where technology opportunities generally impact the strategic plan of the business. And the strategic plan of the business, basically, you create your plans and you execute those plans. And what ends up happening is you want to align that to your information systems architecture, which then leads to issues and benefits or efficiencies, and we find new technologies that are created, and we find a new opportunity, which then now impacts the strategic business plan of the enterprise once again. So it is a circular, in the case of using the EIMM, it's a circular model. It's not something that's just a straight top-down. In outside-in development, which is a little bit different, we're looking at our customers, our suppliers and partners, and then our frontline people, say in the CMS or in the stores, and then our core functions. We're saying that the more important items are really our customers, suppliers, and partners. What do they need? What are they looking for? What are they going to expect? And we work our way inward. One of the challenges here in this model is that sometimes it neglects the core at the expense. It deals with the customers at the expense of the core, and thus we're neglecting the core. And that could be a problem as well. In the sense and response strategy making, which is another chart, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, basically a lot of things are in these small time spurts. So in the same amount of time, we may have smaller choices, figuring out, get a sense of what's actually going on in the industry, what's going on within our organization, and then executing on smaller commitments. You might actually see this in terms of agile development. There are development methodologies out there, and this actually is very similar to the agile development method, where basically what happens is we're doing smaller pieces and delivering smaller pieces, but the key, even in sense and response, is that it's a partnership between the business and the IT folk to determine what needs to get done. When you have a myriad of potential corporate strategies being tested in parallel, could lead to anarchy without a central guiding mechanism. In the sense and response type of framework, there needs to be something that governs the whole process. Otherwise, you end up with a Wild West scenario. Top management ultimately sets the parameters for the experiment, and then they manage the context. That's this whole notion of the strategic envelope. You would like top management to at least provide a box or a foundation whereby everybody who's doing the sense and response planning for their own little area is kind of in line with what top management wants. And you often need to meet regularly to really discuss shifts in the marketplace, how well each piece is proceeding, and gain fellowship from other business units or business units you may not have had been in contact with. And also see if maybe the interest is waning a little bit, that what you're trying to do or the project is really no longer as necessary. The risk of killing a project at that point is much lower than if you had a very large strategic plan that was no longer needed. You're also at the table. Since IS executives weren't always at the table, this actually puts them front and center. And so you see these large planning meetings where people will spend a day and say, these are the things that we want to do, and then you end up with the banter back and forth of saying what you can and can't do or why it can't be done. You cannot, in today's world, really not have everybody involved in the process. You can also test for the future. You can test certain things. So you can provide certain monies for smaller projects like prototypes, where you couldn't do that really before without expensive R&D. So test how well a social media program is going to do, or even test new technology, say a mobile application or even RFID. Couldn't do that really before because all the planning would take up so much time that all the funds would need to be required, and then the project would have to be approved just on the merits or on paper by itself. In terms of putting the infrastructure in place, it's actually a little bit easier in sensor and response because you can actually put together you can put smaller pieces so long as you have a defined standard. So we can buy 2 or 3 servers as opposed to buying a very large set of 10 servers. We may not need them. And when architecture gets involved, what ends up happening is you can find that we can buy one server and split them up and then repurpose them. So dealing with the infrastructure is actually a little bit easier in sensor response because there aren't very large outlays. So that concludes this first part. We'll see you again for part 2.